Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 67. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has subscribed to the show, has gave us a review. Those ratings are super helpful. You're liking, you're sharing, those comments, all that support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guests today. Also want to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment provides first-class weight rooms and has earned an exceptional reputation of providing the finest quality, design, and customer service. Being a direct manufacturer, the team at Samson brings full customization capabilities and not only branding, but in custom equipment needed to execute your next project. From racks, barbells, and plates to dumbbells, benches, flooring, storage, and more, Samson equipment is durable and made to order from premium grade materials, all built from scratch, start to finish. Samson equipment provides professional weight room solutions for all your strength and conditioning needs. See the Samson standard for yourself and learn more at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to use promo code strength_game at checkout to receive 10% off your next order at cerberusstrength.com. In this week's episode, I am joined by Steve Georgio. Steve is an assistant strength conditioning coach at Fordham University, where he oversees the training for the men's basketball, men's soccer, men's and women's tennis, and women's volleyball programs, in addition to assisting with football. He assumed his new position with the Rams after working as a volunteer coach in the summer of 2019, and most recently serving in a similar assistant coach capacity at Iona College for 1 year. While at Iona, Georgio was also an adjunct professor teaching exercise science classes in the undergrad program. He's also spent time as a strength coach at Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning, in addition to being a volunteer coach at the Citadel for the 2016 summer. Georgio continues to train as a coach. He spent 3 years intensively training for Olympic weightlifting, has now shifted more focus to the mat as a competitive athlete in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, where he most recently earned his blue belt. I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Steve Georgio. What's going on, everybody? Today, I've got a new friend of mine, colleague that we got to hook up with a little bit at the CCCA conference this year. We got Coach Steve Georgio on the podcast today. What's going on today, man?
How we doing? Thank you for having me on.
Of course. I'm excited to have you on, man. We talked a little bit beforehand, but you got a lot of stuff going on, so we want to roll right into it. What really got you started in the strength game? Like, what were your kind of sports growing up that you got involved in, and then leading now to your newfound sport that you're competitive in, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu?
Yes, I mean, I'll first take it back all the way to high school. I'm not entirely sure why, but I remember meeting with my advisor at the time in high school, who recommended Springfield College. Maybe she just, knew me better than maybe I knew myself. I'm so lucky and grateful. I took her word for it, just kind of blindly applied to Springfield, got in, loved the campus, and then wound up going there. And, for those that don't know about Springfield College, like everything is health, fitness, PE and things of that realm, coaching, and things of that nature. And so going throughout 4 years of Springfield, I mean, you're either going to be a gym teacher, you're going to be a coach, or you're going to be a strength coach. And basically at any time during the day, during the week, any free time that you have, you're doing something in terms of lifting, in terms of, sport performance, whether you're an athlete there, whether you're joining this club or that club or whatever. For myself, it was Team Iron Sports, which was their strongman competition club. We also did a little bit of powerlifting as well. And that's basically where everything started. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do in high school. I knew, I like this health stuff. I like feeling healthy. I like feeling better. I like eating healthy, and Springfield was just kind of the perfect place to go. And then basically after that, like I have to blame and thank Springfield for everything in terms of, any job opportunity or internship opportunity. If I just dropped Springfield's name, it just kind of either put me towards the top of the list, or it was just kind of like a foot in the door or a conversation starter. So Springfield led me to the Citadel, which was really my first experience into collegiate strength and conditioning. It was more intense than anything I've ever seen before. It was more dialed in terms of programming, in terms of how you run the program and logistics than anything I had ever seen before. That was under Coach Donnell Boucher and Coach Mike Morgan, and just ran an extremely tight ship, down in South Carolina. So from there, I went to grad school at Merrimack, and within that, got the good opportunity to intern at Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning. So just having like those two experiences, like knowing Donnell, knowing Coach Mike, knowing Coach Boyle, it's like, all right, I have to be a strength coach. I respect these people so much. I need to get myself further in this field. From there, I got a job at Iona College under Coach Kelly Shaver, worked alongside Coach Dom Sauduti. And that was basically where I got to cut my teeth in the field, learn how to program for a mass of different athletes, fail a bunch of times. It was a big learning experience. And essentially we were coaching from day one. From Iona, did a little stint in the private sector. I did not like it. As of right now, I do not plan on going back. It just kind of didn't jive with my personality and my goals. And then I was lucky enough to have a decent relationship with Coach Gilfetter. And what's more, that's a Springfield College connection right there. I was talking to him on a Friday about potentially doing an internship at Fordham. I started the next Monday with their football and their basketball team, completed their internship program, and then the rest is just history. I've been here for 3 years, and I'm not going anywhere.
That's awesome. There's some secret schools that, like D3 or small schools aside, that everybody there's a lot of people in the profession that have come from. Springfield's a huge one. Obviously, one of the other ones is good. I wouldn't call it a rival, but like mine, Salisbury is right up there too, with all the GAs that you get the opportunity that end up in the strength conditioning profession. Central College, Mary Mac's up there too. There's a lot of them that are just known for kind of pumping out coaches. And that's awesome to hear, like all the different experiences, and not just like sports performance coaches, but like gym teachers, health and wellness profession. They give you the opportunity to kind of see which avenue you want to take, because just like you said, private is not exactly where you want to go, but I think it's a valuable experience to go and see, like, hey, is this worth it, or can I pick some stuff up along the way? Were there any big like lessons that you kind of learned? Because you said like failing, you were able to learn some stuff. Like, was there anything from the private sector or like your first gig that really kind of solidified or set you in a right path for what you wanted to do next, like based off of failure or based off a learned lesson?
Yeah, I mean, definitely taking it back to Iona. I just learned the value of keeping it simple, and it's probably unfortunate because many of my, mentors and people that I worked under before that probably told me that a million different times. But until I got my first coaching experience, and, you just want to do everything at once. And you're so excited and you're just adding everything into your program. You want to make it as perfect as possible. And then you just kind of realize, all right, like this is just, it's all over the place. I need to take it down a little bit, and I need to just keep it as simple as possible and get really, really good at the basics. And I still, to this day, I still do that. I still will write a program, change my B block up 30 times. And then after a while, just sit down and be like, all right, what's the simplest approach possible? What are things that maybe I could take out that are not necessary in here, and just focus on the big rocks? So that was probably a big thing that I learned with my first experience at Iona College.
No, I think that's great advice for anybody, keeping it simple. I find myself like almost 10 years into it, like full-time coaching, and I still have that problem, like over analyzing a section of a program or over analyzing some part of the lift just to try to shove too much of what I know into a section. And I think you're absolutely right. finding a way to just make sure the main focus is the main focus on that big rock. And if you have some pieces of knowledge that you can kind of throw in there a little bit here and there, that's great, but not letting that kind of overshadow what the focus is. And that's keeping it simple is a great advice for that.
Yeah. And then just to go back to, one of your other questions about Springfield College is, the Kaizen mentality and the competitive nature that is Springfield College is just, that's why it's called Strength Coach U. That's why a lot of people that leave there become strength and conditioning coaches, even at the highest level, or coaches at the highest level. But, and we were just talking about it, myself and Coach Gill, the other day, but it's like at any given day, you might have a conversation with one of your buddies or acquaintances, and they're talking about, hey, I just read this book. Have you read it? I'm like, well, no, I haven't read it, but now I'm going to. Or like, hey, I'm going to, go to the gym and practice my Olympic lifts. What are you going to do right now? You're like, you know what? I should probably get a workout in too. So just the thirst for knowledge and the competitive nature at Springfield College is what makes it so special.
No doubt. And that's kind of cool too. Like just the alumni network that you have from a place like that, where everybody has similar goals, maybe not the exact same ones, but everybody is always kind of constantly sharpening the sword, finding new ways to approach it, and then being open to share those things. I mean, that's, like you said, that's what kind of landed you some of the positions that you've been afforded the opportunity to be in, and it's landed you kind of where you are now. And that's just from constantly working on your craft, constantly making sure that you're improving, and then keeping that network strong. I think those are huge things that you don't get at a lot of places. And it's awesome to hear like Springfield is still continuing to do those sort of things. So like what going into it, because you had a lot of internship opportunities, what really solidified like taking the Fordham one and going for another internship? And what do you think really from that, like maybe from your ability, or maybe it was slightly luck or whatever it is, kind of got you the position for them to promote you?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was definitely a humbling experience in the sense that, previous to that, I was a paid strength and conditioning coach at Iona College and almost had to like take a couple of steps backwards. But I think I was just, I was at a good point in my life. I had a really good support system behind me, whether it be my family, whether it be girlfriend, grandparents, everything like that. And I was in a good place, where I could take this internship opportunity and really like get the most out of it. So it's definitely a humbling, place for me, but I took it for what it was. And I figured, you know what, like, this is what I want to do. I figured out what I don't want to do, which now helped me hone in on what I do want to do. And I'm going to get the most and make the most of this internship opportunity. So I took the approach of no job too small. I'm going to do everything. I'm not going to, act like I was a paid strength and conditioning coach. And I'm basically going to start from, day zero every single day. So having that mindset was definitely massive. Having the mindset of like, I don't know anything. I'm here to learn. I'm here to get better. I think they saw that throughout the internship. They started to give me more responsibilities as it went on. And basically, like, I tried to make myself useful at every different place that I could. And I wanted to make it so that, all right, if there is a job opportunity, which I didn't even know was going to happen, there's no other question. There's no other option. Like, I'm the right fit. And it's just right place, right time. The internship opportunity was coming to an end. We got the funding to open up another spot on the staff, and I interviewed and I got it. But like I said, like throughout the entire internship, I was basically thinking like every single day is my interview. Every single day is me training for either this job or another job. And it worked out well, and I'm grateful for it.
No, that's a great mindset to kind of take, because I mean, a lot of coaches will say that, a lot of people will try to emulate those things, but to know that like at the end of an internship, which possibly is only for that summer, to not have like a guaranteed spot at the end of it, or not know what you're going to do next. A lot of people don't want to put in that same effort day in and day out and continue to learn. And it's kind of discouraging when you don't see the payoff right away. And especially coming from a position where you were a paid full-time coach, to take a step back and realize, hey, I want to learn. Or like I've talked to other people the same way that have been full-time coaches, and they go back to grad school and now they're 6 or 7 years older than someone like the rest of the grad students in their class, but they're like, hey, this is important. This is what's going to set me up for my career. If I have to take a step back to take two forward, like this is what I need to do. And it's great to have a support system on your side, like in order to do those things. So now, like with that, like what you said, you're in a really good position to kind of mentor other people because you've gone through the ringer, you've done a bunch of internships yourself. Why do you think like now it's important to kind of use the mentorship process, and like how do you kind of approach it with the interns now that you're kind of senior to them?
Yeah, I really do think that I'm in an awesome spot. It's always good to be an intern at Fordham, and now a paid member of the staff, because now I can, kind of use that and say, listen, like I was in your shoes. I did this. I did it as best as I could, and it led to this. It could be a job here, it could be a job somewhere else, but I lived it. I went through it. So I always want to tell the interns that on day one, and kind of hope that sinks into their brain. But I mean, the internship opportunity it really is everything, because as hard as you're going to work for no pay, for very little thing, maybe you get a little gear or whatever. If you could show the hardworking mindset and just being humble enough to work day in and day out for free, like what are you going to do when you get your first paid opportunity? It's going to be amazing. But it's everything. I mean, it's a couple things. The really awesome opportunity that we have here at Fordham is we don't have an exercise science major, but there's kids, specifically student athletes, that go here and they might not know it yet, but they want to go into strength and conditioning or some type of health field. So it's almost like interesting being a recruiter and seeing these athletes that maybe come in as freshman athletes that don't know anything about strength and conditioning, never had a strength coach. And you kind of like, you see it happen over time. So like when they're freshmen, maybe they just come in for open gym when other athletes on their team don't. And you remember it, you notice it. All right, then sophomore year, they have perfect technique on everything. And they're honing in on their Olympic lifts, and their Olympic technique is getting a lot better. And you think, you know what? Maybe this person could develop a career in that. And it's great at Fordham because, like I said, they don't have those educational opportunities. So we could take in, and most of the time it's been student athletes, but we could take them in and teach them about something that they'd never learned before. So I almost think about myself as like a part-time recruiter, developing these athletes, yes, for life after college, but then also for maybe a career in strength and conditioning. We've done it, 3 or 4 times already, and I'm just hoping to do it in the future. So we've had a tennis athlete who all he did was bench press. That's it, typical bro type athlete. Then he started to learn a little bit more and get more invested in strength and conditioning. And like I said, now he's pretty much a member of our staff for the most part. This next semester coming up, we have 3 student athletes joining our staff. One from our women's tennis team who essentially when she first came in, just would not leave us alone. Like was in the weight room. If we allowed her to come in 2 times a day, she would do so. And it would just be awesome to have somebody come in and not know that this was even a field or career path, and essentially change their life and shape their life and their career into something that they never even knew existed. And then I would just say, some of the normal interns that we come in, that come in and they know that they want to do strength and conditioning. I mean, we have a really good, program and many opportunities to develop great, confidence and maybe fill the gaps of some other internship programs, because like I said, I've been through the Citadel internship program. I've been through Mike Boyle strength and conditioning. I've been through Iona and even Fordham's. And with that, we've kind of developed a syllabus that I'd like to think is well-rounded, and hopefully fills the gaps that maybe other internship programs don't really have.
No, I like that. I think you're right. And looking back at all the internships I've done, like it's hard to kind of cover every single thing within whatever time period you kind of allotted. In a lot of places, especially like bigger schools, when you take on interns, you're kind of willing, depending on what you want to do, you're willing to take them on at any point in time. So if you have an intern that wants to come in and volunteer their time for 5 weeks in the summer, sure. If you really want to do that and you're committed and you can follow directions and do everything right, great. Then you have some that'll stick around for a year and a half. So in that time, you can only learn a certain amount of stuff. And being able to have like a well-rounded curriculum where you try to cover as many bases as you can and really set them up for the future if they want to be in the profession. It's a tall task to kind of do, especially in a short amount of time. But I think to your point, it's pretty cool to have a lot of student athletes who want to find a career in it or don't really just kind of stumble upon it. Like you said, being a recruiter, I think that is awesome. And I think that's where I found a lot of student athletes being successful in the career too. I've had a few, like from my time at Salisbury, that are now full-time strength coaches. They were my players, then they interned, they were GAs, and then they ended up, now they're full-time strength coaches. They've had a few of them been on the podcast here too. And it's cool to see that because it's those hardworking ones that are in the weight room all the time. You try to kick them out. They're pretty good leaders as well. And you kind of, I don't know what it is about them, but you can kind of sniff it out. Like this person just has it. Is there anything like in common that you've seen from those four, maybe besides just sticking out in the weight room where you have to kick them out, like when you're leaving for the day, that are kind of character traits that are drawn to those internships?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say two things. And the first one is, one thing that kind of has been on my mind lately and kind of a theme with a bunch of different teams, whether it be over the summer semester or in the past, is champions do extra. And with that being said, like strength and conditioning coaches, I'd like to think do extra. And that's kind of at least what I took from my mentors, and basically every assistant and head strength coach that I've met, or even aspiring strength coaches too. So it's, like we've been talking about, those kids that when you say, hey, listen, like we only did a 60-minute session, we might not have finished the workout, you're about to go to practice right now, a champion would come back and do the rest of it. Like those kids that come back, we remember those things. And then I'd probably say the second part is just listening and learning to, some of the different concepts that we might be teaching. I mean, as you very well know, we only have 5 minutes before the session, maybe 5 minutes, after the session to talk over education, the why behind the program. Maybe we talk about nutrition, sleep, or recover. But some of the kids that then some of the student athletes that then turn into intern coaches here are those that have listened to each one of those messages. They remember them, maybe they write them down. And essentially the way I like to think about it is like, if you do, I've only been here for 3 years, but 3-4 years or whatever, you're almost doing an internship in strength and conditioning. If you listen to every single message that we say, every little word, if you track all of your weights, if you're thinking about some of the concepts, that we're trying to teach you in the weight room, you remember all those, throughout your 4 years, you just did a 4-year internship program. So if you end your, senior year, spring semester with an actual internship program, you're elevated, you're higher than, any other intern that we could take on from a different school or from high school or what have you. So I'd probably say those are the two big traits.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's why a lot of full-time coaches, when they're looking for filling GA positions or looking for internships, slots for like people, it's a lot of times we're looking for like former athletic experience. Like whether it be like how successful you are, that doesn't matter. It's like, but to be on the side of the bar where you're actually under it, you're training, you've been coached by someone, you're willing to take directive, like you have some sort of idea of how to execute movements. Like now the big thing is learning why it's being done, learn how to actually be on the other side of the bar and coach it and figure out what program it is, what kind of goes into it. But you're already a big step ahead from anybody else that hasn't had that much experience, because everything that we're doing as a coach, you're on the receiving end of it as an athlete. That puts you in a better position to be a coach, I think. And that's why like everybody on the show like are people that are coaches and have trained or competed at a high level in whatever sport that is. And I think that kind of feeds into each other. Like one sharpens the other. If you're willing to learn on one end, you're definitely willing to learn on the other end too. But you talked about it a little bit before, like trying to fill those gaps from internship positions and what you've kind of seen from your experience. Without going into like full detail, like what your guys' curriculum is, what were some of the big kind of areas that you saw a void from your internship experience that you're trying to really, you feel is important to implement with your interns and add into your guys' program for their teaching?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there was a void, but I could definitely say that I was lucky through the Citadel, through Mike Boyles, through Iona and Fordham, is that we actually coached, and specifically with Iona College under Coach Kelly Shaver. Like from day one, it was a coaching. I knew it was a coaching internship, um, and that might be something that's missing in certain internship programs that I've heard of. Is that maybe you just kind of get towels, or you just record weights, or you just do this, that, the other, admin things and logistical, setup, breakdown, things of that nature. And I think that stuff is definitely important. And it's important to learn how to clean a weight room, how to maintain a weight room, and do the little things because no job too small. But at the end of the day, if you want to be a strength coach, if you want to get a job after the internship opportunity, you have to coach. So that's probably a big thing that we definitely hone in on with this internship program is we say the first kind of 2 weeks, if this is the introduction period. And all I want you to do is just talk to the athletes, try and find some common ground, get to know their names, make sure they know your name. And then after that, like coach all the time. If there's ever an athlete on the floor, whether it be open gym, whether it be a team, like you are coaching. ABC, always be coaching. And I would say the second part is programming. So one thing that we do, and I can't speak enough about the Citadel's internship program, which I definitely stole a lot from, with our framework and with our syllabus, is the programming aspect. So what I hope and what I try and strive for is that every intern that goes through our program, when they finish, they have a good base of programming knowledge, and their final project is a set program, warm up, speed and agility, conditioning, anything you want to add in that maybe you want to track or something like that. But something on a piece of paper that if you got interviewed tomorrow, you would do good, and you would, open some eyes for the most part. So those are two things.
Yeah, that's great. I think that is one thing that more people appreciate, that you actually have the ability to coach, because I can't tell you the many times that I've seen like a great resume and like everything like checks all the boxes, everything we're trying to fill, whether it be for us, like we have volunteers, we have internships, and then we have coaching assistant positions. So like it's tiered in that level based off your experience, like what level you're ready for. And I can't tell you how many times I've talked to someone with such a great resume that just can't hold a conversation. And if you can't hold a conversation, if you can't figure out what to say in that moment, chances are like it's going to be pretty difficult for you to coach. And I think that's a big thing for young coaches, just even being able to, like you said, the first 2 weeks, learn the athletes' names, have them know your names, build some rapport, find some common ground with them. I think that's the first stage. If it's a people business and we're always in this service industry, you have to be able to carry those conversations, because if you can't do that, there's no way they're going to listen to you when you actually give them criticism or coaching cues or advice, anything along those lines.
Yeah, and I guess like I just want to set these student athletes and these kids up for success and whatever they're going to find. It might have to be another internship. Maybe it's a GA, and hopefully it's a job. But I've went through many job application processes where I've had to coach an athlete during the interview process. I've had to coach one of the strength and conditioning coaches. I've had to demonstrate things myself. Whether I was in a suit or khaki pants or what have you, and just having that experience and knowing like, all right, I've coached hundreds of athletes before, and I was so eager from day one of Citadel Strength and Conditioning just to get in front of athletes. It's like, all right, like I've been here before, I'm comfortable, and hopefully then I could be at the top of this list, for this assistant strength and conditioning coach position or what have you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think a lot of the experience, like we talked about, I think that makes you more comfortable and prepared for whatever kind of gets thrown at you. And yeah, there's job interviews that are going to be some wild ones that like might throw you for a loop. But if you've actually done your due diligence, like you have a good experience, you've gone through some of these internships and you've taken in as much as you can, then you should be prepared for those. And like along your way, like in addition to just like your coaching, you've like we talked about, you've been an adjunct professor, like you've taught undergrad classes, like you worked, I know when you were at Iona, you worked with like the nutrition staff pretty closely. Like you did weightlifting, you've now taken up like jujitsu. So like you have a broad experience. So how important is it for you to like continue to learn, continue to improve, and kind of expand on what your scope of practice is now, so that now you can be the best coach possible?
Yeah, I mean, I first have to thank, the staff members that I work with, whether it be Coach Gill, Coach Greer, Coach Bernardi, but it's like having them and having them always trying to get better, and who's doing this certification, who's taking this course, who's reading this or whatever, then inspires me to do the same thing. And then we also have extremely intelligent athletes being at Fordham University. And with that being said, like, you can never, for lack of a better term, like, you can never be caught slipping for the most part. Like, you always have to be on your game. So I want to make sure that I have knowledge in pretty much every different area, so that no matter what, whether it be a simple question after a lift, like, boom, I have an answer for you right then and there. And it's never like this lack of trust because I can't answer a question about nutrition or a question about sleep, and basically always showing them like, hey, I live this stuff. Okay. So I could tell you anecdotally what I've found and what works for me. And then B, I could also give you like a different, a different viewpoint on what I've read, on what others have told me, on what I've researched and things of that nature. So, I mean, it's everything, it's something that Coach Gill all the time, we'll just be in the office and he'll basically turn around to all of us. And, we got this small office where we're packed in, which is a good and a bad thing, but mostly a good thing. And he'll basically turn around and be like, all right, what are you reading next? Or where are you going? Or what continuing education are we doing, or something like that? So having that and having to know, all right, I got to be ready for that question whenever it comes is really great. But we're always trying to develop, always trying to get better, because you never know what you're going to get, right? You never know what an athlete might need or might ask you or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's great too. And I think that ties back into what we were talking about before, like just being able to hold a conversation with athletes and keeping in contact with them, and being prepared for whatever is thrown your way. So with that said too, like what are your kind of go-tos for continuing education, or what's on your bookshelf, or what are you listening to right now?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. So I would probably say last year was a year of nutrition. So I was just trying to, run through precision nutrition, look up different nutrition certifications and stuff like that. This year was all about Olympic weightlifting. So I actually got to go see Dmitry Klokov with Coach Gilfeder, and we went to his 2-day seminar in Pleasantville, New York. And then we actually got to go see Coach Ma in New York City, who used to be a Chinese Olympic weightlifting coach. A third one that I would like to do in the future is Mohammed Ehab. That's another one I'd like to see, but just basically trying to knock off Olympic weightlifting right now. And I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to, get into after that. And then as far as, little bits of continuing education, like just always listen to podcasts and stuff like that. Like, you'd be surprised that, I'm sure you very well know and, live your life like this, but the normal person would be surprised that, how much free time they might have, whether it be driving to work, driving from work, or whatever, but always just trying to listen to a podcast, whether it be, Jocko or Mark Bell or somebody like that, about health, about nutrition, maybe something completely outside of, strength and conditioning or health. But just spending every little 10 to 15 minute gap, just trying to learn one small thing, not trying to take down everything, not trying to change the game, not trying to reinvent the wheel, just trying to learn one little thing. So all those things.
I like it. No, those are good ones too. Those are some of my mainstay ones, but I like what you said, like learning, just find one takeaway from it. Yeah, I think if you can go to a presentation, you can have a conversation with someone, like if it's someone you don't want to talk to, or it's an internship, like you find out things that you don't want to do or how not to do it when you're in charge. Like if you could take something small away from those, then it was beneficial. Maybe not the same amount of time you'd like to invest in something, but hey, you can't win them all. But yeah, finding something to take away from it. So I know the big one for you now is like jujitsu, and congrats on like earning your blue belt. I know it was a little bit ago, but still, I'm stuck in white belt phase, and I haven't looked for a new like gym out here since I've moved to Florida. I got stuck doing it during COVID and pre and post COVID, so I'm still stuck back in white belt. But what kind of drew you to that and like grappling and what actually got you to actually compete? Because I know the guys yelled at me all the time. It's like, you're going to fall in love with it. I was like, I don't want to, but if it happens, it happens. What really kind of drew you to the mat? And then why'd you choose to actually start taking it competitively?
Yeah, I mean, it was a couple different things. At first, definitely I have to shout out my brother, and I'm really lucky, to have someone who's still into athletics, still into fitness, still into self-defense, everything like that. And, just kind of growing up was my go-to guy if we're going to go on a run, if we're going to do this or do that. And, someone who was always pushing me, maybe pushing me a little too hard when I was a kid, maybe, beating me up a little too much, this, that, the other. But having him, as my best friend, what we used to do, back in the high school days, back in college, is we would just go on YouTube, and he kind of he showed me at first what Brazilian Jiu Jitsu was, why it's important, why self-defense is important, and he knew like these really, really, really simple and basic concepts, because he took a couple classes, I think, when he was in high school. But what we used to do is we used to go into our living room, pull YouTube up on our television, and just watch some of the Gracie breakdown videos, and we'd just watch them in slow-mo. We'd rewind them. We would just learn some simple moves, and we'd basically try them out. Now, we were probably doing everything wrong. Technique was probably awful. And basically it was like, as you have probably went through before, it's like when you tell somebody, hey, we're just going to go 50%, we're going to flow roll, and 50% turns into 75, turns into 100. We broke a couple couches, we broke a couple tables, probably put a hole in the wall as well. But going back to that, like, I wouldn't have changed that for the world. We had so much fun doing it. And at least when then we made the exact decision to, all right, we're going to start jiu-jitsu, we're going to start it this week, I was able to actually go live rolling on the first day, which a lot of people will sit out, they'll watch for a week or so. I was able to start on day one, which is nice because I had that experience. So having my brother was nice. It might be a little intimidating. It might be tough to start something brand new by yourself, but having somebody with you kind of makes it a little bit easier. And trust me, it was tough. And it was something where, and I'm finding this now with a lot of my friends, is you keep saying, oh, I'm going to start it next week, or I'll start it next. And we were doing this 100%. And then I just texted my brother one day. I said, you know what? We're going to find a gym in Westchester. We're going to start this week, and it's going to happen. That was 2 years ago. And, we've been going 3-4 times a week ever since that, and how we knew it was the right place is, I'll never forget my first roll. I think I got elbowed in the nose. I started gushing blood, all over myself, all over my partner. And I just look up to one of the coaches, like, do we keep going? Do we stop or whatever? And he's still my coach to this day, Coach Crow. He was like, keep going. We got to train hard here. I was like, you know what? This is the place for me, 100%. So it started with my brother, but then having the, family type atmosphere that we have at this gym, and it's called Animals MMA, is what kept me going and kept me going multiple times per week. And, I'm exhausted on certain days, and, long days, numerous days per week, whatever, just because of what the job calls for. Like, there might be certain times I'm like, you know what, if I really, 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 really wanted to, I could go home right now and just go to sleep. But I know what I have to do, not what I want to do. And just having that family atmosphere and knowing that, it's going to cheer me up. I'm going to laugh, I'm going to sweat. I'm going to, probably bleed a little bit too, has been what kept me going, throughout the years. And it's been tough. It really has been. But I basically told myself, like, that Jocko approach, hey, you got to start today. You got to start this week, and then never stop. Like, don't procrastinate. Don't put it off. The days where you are beat up, the days where you are a little sore, because it's tough to maintain, jiu-jitsu practices and still lift and still coach and travel and do all these other things. But I'm still going to go no matter what. And the days that I'm really tired, I'm going to go even harder. The days that I really don't want to go, all right, I'm going to drive right there, and I'm going to show up early, and I'm going to stay later and stuff like that, because that's what really matters.
I love it. That's awesome. Yeah. Finding a place like that and having your brother, and, like, again, just like your coach, and having like a support system and someone that's going to push you and hold you accountable. That's huge. And that's probably what keeps you in it. And that's the days that you don't want to go, like being able to see him go, or just like the support system asking where you are. Those things definitely kind of hold you to the standard. That's the same. I had something similar like back like in Fresno and like California, like Pacific Martial Arts was my place. And those like same thing. I was like, I keep telling myself I want to do it, just show up. And then I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna do it the next day and the next day. And after that point, you realize like, oh, I'm a couple weeks, oh, I'm a couple months into this. It's like, but yeah, the beginning is probably the hardest part. Starting anything new too, especially like once you start getting older too, you realize like, hey, I played sports when I started like maybe I started baseball when I was 8, and you just keep playing until you're in college, and maybe I'll try to take it to pro. But then people forget that you can start it at any age, whatever you want. Again, it's a weird kind of concept, and I'm sure you dealt with it too, that there's so many different types of people that end up coming in there, so many different people starting at different stages. And for whatever reason, like grappling sports, wrestling, jujitsu, like taekwondo, anything like that, the camaraderie in it is pretty unlike anything else, especially just the physical contact, how close you are, and how willing people are to actually help and assist.
Yeah, and I probably stay on top of that. And I don't know if you found this as well, but it's this crazy theme that's going on. So since I started jujitsu, like a lot of people that maybe I've just learned about or I've had respect for, or maybe I listen to their podcast or I read their books or I've just, seen their Instagram page or whatever. It's kind of an interesting theme where like a lot of the people that I respect, they also do jujitsu. And I never really noticed it or found out about it until I started doing it. It's like you'll listen to Mark Bell's podcast, and I'll have this person come on and he'll talk about, barefoot sprinting or I don't know, cold plunges or something like that. And you're like, you know what? I respect this person's mental fortitude. And then towards the end of the podcast, you realize, all right, they also do jujitsu. So there's a nice common theme going on with this Brazilian jiu-jitsu stuff.
That's pretty cool. Hey, so with your training, like I know you did weightlifting pretty intensively for a little bit before you started getting more involved on the mat. How has like training for you kind of improved your coaching? They're very different disciplines. Obviously, like jujitsu is unlike any of the sports you currently work with at Fordham. So knowing that this is a different type of sport, but like for you, you're training in it, how does that kind of inadvertently or directly help your ability to coach?
Yeah, I mean, 100% it directly influenced my programming, my style of coaching, and maybe my demeanor. And I'd specifically say with in-season sports and athletes. And kind of a way to think about it is I'm almost always in season because I'm always trying to train multiple times per week. I'm trying to compete throughout the year and things of that nature. So I like to think about it like I'm always in season. And I did not have a good balance. It was a mistake that I definitely made when I first started, but I did not balance training and recovery and jujitsu and everything, all the different and work and lifestyle. I definitely couldn't balance it at first. But it's, something you have to go through. Um, Now, 2 years later, flash forward, I think I have a better idea on, exactly how to balance lifting and how to still perform on the mats and still improve in the weight room and everything like that. So specifically with in-season teams, because of the load that I'm putting on my body, I really found out that, hey, like what I previously thought was a minimal effective dose is not the minimal effective dose. And, how I previously would have coached an in-season athlete or maybe approached each day or session, I'm going to completely change that kind of mindset. So that was a big thing that directly correlated to my training approach. When I first started, it's an easy way to kind of think, all right, jujitsu, you need power, you need strength, you need a little bit of fitness, you need just about everything, flexibility, and I want to have it all. And I was still trying to be a really good Olympic weightlifter and still be strong, and then also gain a little bit of flexibility and have the endurance to last, 5-6 minutes per round. I found out pretty soon, all right, that's not possible. You need to really, really, as we talked about before, keep it simple. My sessions got a lot shorter. My movements changed a lot. I'd probably say nowadays one of the biggest things that helped me was some of the knees over toes guys and ATG stuff. That's helped me out a lot with just keeping my joints healthy, because I'll go through a long session of training and it hurts to sleep, it hurts to walk the next day. But doing a lot of those movements and kind of getting some of my flexibility back has changed the game for the most part. It's significantly lower the weights that, maybe I was able to do in the past. But as far as like joint longevity, as far as my tendons, my ligaments, I feel a lot better. So that it's definitely affected the way I coach in-season athletes, and it's helped me out a ton, just kind of making those mistakes and learning from them.
Yeah, that's great. I think, again, like to kind of harp on what you said, like failing, making mistakes, learning from those things. Like you don't get that stuff when you're just relying on what a past experience is. If you're continuously doing those things day in and day out in the present, and you're planning stuff for like the future in your own training, that's what's really going to set you up so that you can continue to learn. Because this, like we said, it's a people business and things are always changing. You're going to get thrown curveballs left and right from the student athletes we're going to work with. So being able to shift your program, still keep it simple, but throw in new things that are maybe a better approach, a better way to kind of attack it, better way to just kind of tweak and refine your program. That comes from continuously learning, picking up new skills, like adding new things that you learn from your own training too. That's great stuff. So with you, like shifting focus a little bit too, like you're going to lose some of that strength if you want to really excel on the mat. But for you, like, have you been able to take any of the stuff directly from the mat and maybe incorporate some of the movements with your athletes, like maybe like flow patterns, different movement stuff? Like you talked about like knees over toe guy and the ATG stuff for you, but is anything from like jiu-jitsu, maybe even just like the rounds or the positions or anything, been able to kind of influence a little bit of what the programming looks like for some of your student athletes without getting too into the weeds of like grappling work?
Yeah, so I mean, we definitely don't do live rounds, but I mean, let me first say that just you think I'm joining this school of martial arts, I'm joining Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, I'm starting this lifelong journey, and at first I maybe thought of it like a physical approach, but then learning how mental it really is, and learning whether it be the respect for the gym or the respect for the art, maybe even reading into kind of where jiu-jitsu started and everything like that. Like these are lessons that I want these athletes to know, because I really think it'll help them become better athletes, but they're also better people. So an awesome opportunity that I've had experience with is just bringing martial arts to the athletes. So whether it be doing a kickboxing class with the volleyball team here at Fordham, or bringing the men's basketball team to actually bring them to the jiu-jitsu gym and have one of the trainers take them through a workout. Like these are really, really valuable lessons. And it's also great to just have fun, to kick a bag a little bit, to learn how to punch, good for self-defense, but then just a good experience that I think they're going to take with them and, remember forever. So having that opportunity was absolutely awesome. And then, 100%, I've taken some principles and taken some lessons and brought them back to strength and conditioning. And I'd probably say, with specific sports like volleyball or men's basketball, and really all the teams, but just to hone in on those two, I really want those athletes to be ready for anything. And that's what I'm always saying, in the beginning of our lifts is, hey, today we might do a little bit of this, or we might do a little bit of that. We might do more flexibility today or more power on another day or whatever. And really just having like a cumulative approach of, I want you guys to be ready for anything at any time, at any given day, and just be as versatile as possible. And one of the major things that helped me out a lot with jiu-jitsu, and that they can, then translate into their sport, is rolling, is crawling, and some of those different movements. Specifically with our basketball players that might be, their limb lengths might not be too conducive with a roll, with a, getting off the ground or getting on the ground and off the ground without using a hand, something like that. So taking those principles into those specific sports, I think has paid off huge dividends. Like as an athlete, as a basketball player, as a volleyball player, you might find yourself down on the ground a lot, throughout a game. And with that being said, you should know how to fall. You should know how to pick yourself up. You should know how to take your body through different planes of motion or different ranges of motion. And I think it was, an FRC principle, or maybe a quote by Dr. Andre Spina was like, you'll always regret not training the range of motion or the body part or the movement that you got injured in. So just training some of those different weirder movements or maybe uncomfortable movements, like a forward roll, like a side roll, like a backwards roll. So we've, in many different phases and seasons, we've taken our athletes out to our turf field and we worked on some of those things. Or, hey, maybe it's just a cartwheel or this type of, forward and backwards bear crawl, crab walk, or lateral crawl or something like that. And, it's something where I've gotten the opportunity to get really good at those because that's our warm up for jiu-jitsu. But these athletes go from not being able to control their body to having a lot more body awareness. So specifically with those sports, basketball, these taller, lankier athletes, or volleyball, for instance, our libero might fall down on the ground, I'd probably say 50 to 100 times per game. And just knowing that, okay, we've been in that awkward or weird or extreme range of motion, and we've done it in a controlled environment. So hopefully they're more likely to be healthier in that range of motion or in that plane of movement.
No, I love that. I think that's great. All that stuff is super helpful. I used a bunch of those things. I introduce it with my freshman lacrosse guys that don't travel all the time. And I think they get a kick out of it more than anything too. And I've used it in the past. I think it's awesome. And what bums me out the most is I can't remember, either I can't remember or it just was never taught to me, some of those things. If you didn't grow up wrestling, or if you didn't grow up doing a lot of those patterns, like where you're crawling or rolling, or like you didn't do gymnastics, or you didn't do if you didn't do cheerleading, like most only girls usually do cheerleading like towards middle school and high school, you didn't do a lot of those things, you probably never did cartwheels or like learn how to crawl or learn how to roll or anything like that. Like traditional sports kind of just skip straight ahead. So it's nice to kind of go back to the foundational movements and start to add those things in. Because like you said, if you're a libero, if you're playing volleyball, you're probably going to be on the deck a lot. And getting up off the ground, being athletic, being able to move, basketball guys like just being able to be limber and understand that like contact under the rim, you're not going to fall how you intend to most of the time. So those are all great things to kind of keep well-rounded and balance them and make sure your athletes are prepared for anything.
Yeah, I think you definitely said it best. Like you could tell from, one of the simpler drills that we might do is just an egg roll. Like, can you sit, hug your knees, roll back and roll forwards? And just based on doing that, you could see who started playing basketball and stopped doing everything else. You brought up a great point and said it best. And then who can't, who just rolls back, hits their head against the ground and just cannot roll back up. Who's maybe a little bit more athletic or has that body awareness. But I think it really is valuable where it's like, all right, let's take a basketball player. Let's kind of turn him upside down for a second and see if he knows where his shoulders are, where his hips are, or whatever. One of the big drills in jiu-jitsu is shrimping, which is a fairly simple drill. But it's essentially like, can you do a glute bridge and then move your body? Can you dictate where your hips are going to go and where your shoulders are going to go if they're moving at the same time into different spaces? So it really is interesting to see like who specified, who played the same sport, and then, all right, like you said, who did gymnastics, who just went to a kid's gym, was rolling and tumbling and doing a bunch of these different movements when they were a kid. It really, really is valuable. And one thing that I was surprised with getting into college athletics is like, these basketball players, they don't know how to fall. And imagine how many injuries could be alleviated if they just knew how to fall and maybe roll out of it or just fall simply onto their back. And, one of the big drills that we do in jiu-jitsu is a break fall. So how can you fall and not have your legs come up or roll over you? How can you fall and slide out of it and almost make it look athletic? And I really enjoy those moments during a game when an athlete will, fall and maybe you get nervous for a second, but you realize they know how to kind of turn, control their body and slide out of it and be as safe as possible.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like just knowing how the sport specificity is kind of gone and how these day and age athletes are. I mean, even like in my age, I didn't specialize in any sports. Like I picked up sports kind of as I moved. And even looking back on what I did, like in PE or anything from elementary school, middle school, high school, like a lot of that stuff was already starting to slowly disappear. So I think this is great to kind of add back into a foundation. And that was one of the best things about me like having my short stint in jiu-jitsu, and hopefully I get back into it again, like once I can get everything settled. But that was huge, working with my wrestlers at Fresno and like just getting hands on them and learning all the things from that. I started implementing that stuff with athletes from day one. I mean, learning how to jump is great, learning how to bound and control yourself when you run. But if you're not a sport that really needs a lot of high intensity running too, then some of those foundational movements, learning how to fall, learning how to break, like learning how to kind of decelerate and maneuver your body like around someone or around an object. I think those things are awesome. And that's a great thing to kind of touch on, and introducing them to pretty much all your athletes is going to be beneficial.
Yeah, and I'd also like to expand on that and say if you can, do some of the movements that we teach you, whether it be these different rolling type movements or crawling, and your body awareness increases, like your ability to learn different skills is also going to increase. Like if you can do some of these extreme movements, whether it be upside down, whether it be twisting, turning, rolling, or whatever, your body awareness is going to increase. Like I could guarantee a lot of the sports skills that either have a lot of body awareness or don't are going to be a little bit easier. Learning new skills is going to be easier. Like I could definitely say for me, that aspect, taking that back into the weight room, like movements that I've been doing for upwards of 5 to 10 years just feel different because I have more of an idea, where my knees are in space, and, whether it be a step down or a single leg squat or something like that. Like I have way better control over my knees. I have way better control over my ankles. Awkward things happen during, sport movements, as you very well know. Like, one thing that we've kind of been experimenting with here at Fordham is, during certain types of squats, maybe your heel comes off the ground for a second. Can you still control using just either the ball of your foot or relying on your toes a little bit more? And, through jujitsu training, like I could do a single leg squat, my heel could come up a little bit, and I have that strength in my toes to just not completely fall or have my knee cave in or something like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like that example, and like just learning new skills when you have a broader base, like that becomes a lot easier. And like we talked about, like sports specificity, without beating that to a pulp, like you can kind of tell when an athlete has played other sports and everything, because they pick up new skills that you're trying to introduce them quicker. And that's why I think it's important, just to, the same as an athlete, same as a coach, continuing to challenge yourself, learn new things, whether it be health, nutrition wise, like picking up a new sport to just dabble in, trying a new program. I think all those things kind of make picking up a new skill even more easier, and it broadens your ability to coach and be an athlete in general too.
Yeah, and and we kind of live it every single day or every single new semester when there's brand new kids coming in, and I think it was really eye-opening to just try a bunch of different things. Whether it be back in the day where I started strongman training, or at Iona College where I got into Olympic weightlifting, or now with jujitsu, is like I have a coach now, and I uh, learn the dynamic, of coach and athlete, and I learn it from their point of view now. So I learn, how I react when maybe I have a little bit less sleep, or maybe I'm a little stressed out, or I'm really not 100% 10 toes down or thinking about just this session, or maybe I got social or family or work or something like that. But it's really good to be in their shoes for the most part. And all right, this is how a freshman is essentially coming in. Maybe they've never done strength conditioning before. What is their mindset? What are they thinking right now? And it definitely helps you out a lot as a coach having gone through that.
Yeah, like we talked about with finding common ground, like that's a relatable experience. Like just because it's different situations, different age, different training background, but you have a freshman stepping in on campus for the first time. And yes, they know their sport pretty well, but it's a new situation. They're going to learn. Maybe they've never been in the weight room and they need to learn everything from you and how to do it. There's a dynamic to that coach athlete relationship. And the same with you picking up jujitsu for the first time. Now you're on the reverse end. So you have an experience that you can kind of tie in with your athletes that are learning something new, as now you come back to the weight room and you're in the coaching role. And I think that's huge, to be able to live both sides of it still, and know that one complements the other. You can learn from the other, and it continues to make it relatable. And I'd be hard pressed if I look back in like 10 years and all the people I have on the show, if they're still coaching and they're still training, I'd love to see like if that's the reason why, if they still put themselves in that athletic position, challenge themselves, pick up new things to learn, constantly be trying to improve, like are they still able to relate with 10 years, 20 years down the line, this new crop of student athletes that end up coming in? That's what's kind of interesting to me, because definitely don't listen to the same music for the most part. Like there's a lot of new things that I have no idea. I'll be damned if I get a fucking TikTok. So that, like, being able to relate to them in different aspects, like from an athlete point of view, like I think that coaching athlete dynamic, that's pretty awesome. And I don't know if you realized that until you started like getting on the mat more and more, that hey, this is something I can relate back to my athletes.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing that kind of just popped into my head is I almost relate it to like, all right, a first year, college student coming in and just thinking about all the things that they probably have that they haven't had before. It's classes, academic advisors, coaches, assistant coaches. They got to come to lift. They got to go to practice, and it could definitely be an overwhelming experience. And maybe my first year on the job, I'd be pretty stressed out if they don't learn how to squat in a day or in an hour or something like that. But now just being a little bit more relaxed and being a little bit more understanding, and to think like, all right, they're probably pretty overwhelmed right now. My first week in jiu-jitsu, when I was getting tapped out, I was freaking out too. And I was overwhelmed as well. But now, a couple years later, I could relax a little bit more. I could breathe. And I know that when I do that, I wind up getting out of that situation, at least most of the time. But just kind of, being in their shoes and learning to breathe, how do you deal with being a little bit overwhelmed or maybe a little anxious or something like that? And then on top of that, you've got to learn 20 different things, and you got loud music going on and people yelling at you, and kind of how do you deal with that? So that's definitely, that experience has been massive.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to take in as a freshman or anybody stepping into a new athletic adventure, but realizing like it is a process, and like you learning this in a day is not going to change the world or end it too. So being able to take it with a grain of salt and just relax in that moment, I think that's great advice. Hey, so like any good training session, and we're not rolling any extra, we got four questions, 4 quarters, and yeah, we can do a last minute like death match roll for overtime, but you can go as quick as you want with these, or you could take your time. But you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, first one I got for you: biggest influence in strength and conditioning, and if you've got one, favorite BJJ athlete that you're following right now.
Biggest influence in strength conditioning is tough. I'm going to expand that and kind of say people that know me know that I'm really into stand efforting. That's more of like a nutrition or health or lifestyle approach. He's been a massive influence for me in that realm. And then jiu-jitsu athlete. I really, really enjoy watching and learning from the Rutolo brothers, who are two brothers who've been doing jiu-jitsu ever since they've been breathing for the most part. And some of the roles that they have and the way they go back and forth, it really shows you that jiu-jitsu is an art form.
Awesome. Hey, what can you be found doing when you're not coaching or training? Like what outside of the four walls of the weight room, off the mat, are some of your go-to hobbies?
I will say family and my girlfriend, just spending time with family, spending time with my girlfriend, just, having real conversations, reading, and then listening to music, no matter what, at any time throughout the day. I don't care if I'm taking, a 5-minute shower, a song's got to be on no matter what.
There you go. Hey, if you weren't coaching in strength conditioning, what do you think you would be doing as a career? And if you could go pro in any sport besides jiu-jitsu, what would that be?
Man, I love this question. I would have loved to have went into the music field, whether it be as a producer or something like that. I just think it'd be a really interesting field to go into, to kind of be on the back end, to hear a song like when it's first being made and it's going to be a hit, something like that. I think would be valuable. Or, even as a musician. So I used to play the drums growing up, and, I definitely, when I was in elementary school, middle school, that's what I wanted to do as a career. What sport? It's kind of cheap that you said not jiu-jitsu.
I know it's the newest one, so that's why I was like, I gotta maybe say like in 2 years, if you pick up another one just to kind of add to the collection, maybe what would that one would be?
I could say Olympic weightlifting, I think would have been cool. I don't know if that necessarily counts, but just practicing so much for, 6 lifts it's so intriguing. The pressure. That would be interesting.
All right. Well, this one ties in a little bit to the last one, since you'd like to be a producer. If you could set up your ideal training day, and I know it's probably different from on the mat, especially if you're not allowed to listen to music there, what is your go-to training music and best post-training meal look like?
Okay. I'll say it depends. So if I'm having a normal training day, it would definitely be some sort of Blink 182 playlist. That just gets me going on a normal day, and I'll give a shout out to one of our athletes here, Sean Holland, who made us a really good playlist that has a lot of Blink 182 on it. But if I'm trying to go hard, if it's a PR day or something like that, we kind of have like a group playlist here, and I think Coach Gill had, added most of the songs to it or all the songs to it, and it's a big, Metallica, Rage Against the Machines, and music like that. But that's only if we're really getting after it. And then what was the second question? Second part.
Best post-training meal.
Ooh. Okay, you know what I've been into lately? So Carnivore MD on Instagram, Paul Saladino. There's something about eating off of a wooden board that is just primal, and just makes the food taste better. But some type of, cut of meat or steak, burgers, something like that, maybe some prosciutto, but having some meat and fruit all on the same board, maybe put a little honey on the meat, and just having that all together is ideal, at least right now. It might change a month from now, and it might have been different in the past.
All right. Hey, so the last one I got for you for overtime. What is the most important attribute, in your opinion, of a successful coach, and then of a successful athlete, if they're not the same?
I'd say for a coach, and this was definitely a theme in our conversation, but just having the thirst to get better, having the thirst to get more knowledge and get more experience, it is a big one. I think if you stay the same, then this field could potentially get monotonous. But if you're always changing things up, if you're always learning, you're always trying to get better, like every single day, you're going to come in with just, a hunger to coach these athletes and teach these athletes a different thing. And then as far as an athlete is probably the ability to learn and the ability to change. Like if you come in your first year, whether you're here for 2 to 5 years or whatever it is, if you come in and you leave and you have barely changed and you haven't really opened up, changed your mindset, tried new things, it's just not really going to work out for you. We probably don't have the greatest relationship as far as strength conditioning coach to athlete. So having the ability to change, to adapt, and to be coachable, I think is massive for a student athlete.
That's great. Yeah, those are funny too, because those both pretty much are very similar. Being adaptable, being able to change, being able to learn. I think those are huge. And you're right. This job can get pretty monotonous if you're not trying to actually push the envelope, learn some new things, and actually get better. So, no, that's awesome. Hey, for anybody that's got any follow-up questions for you, maybe want to pick your brain or interested in maybe getting on the mat and seeing what your approach was like, where can they get a hold of you, and where can they follow along your journey?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm Steve Georgio. My email is sgeorgio1@fordham.edu. And then we also have our Ram Strength Instagram page, which I would tell multiple people to follow. We're always putting out content. We're talking about and hyping up some of the interns that we have, and just always trying to put out good information that maybe we're reading or doing here at Fordham.
Awesome. Hey, Steve, well, I can't thank you enough for coming on today, man. I know about to kick it in high gear for the summer with some of your teams coming back. So appreciate it. Definitely we'll have to touch base a little bit more once I can get on the mat and learn from a higher belt than me for sure.
You're always a white belt at heart, but I appreciate you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course, man. Take care.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.